The angling media over the years have tried to convince us that we must use special hook links in order to catch big carp. I'm a big fan of using monofilament hook links for carp fishing. So I started looking around for a material that I could buy in strains of 15 pounds or less, that I could buy on 100 metre spools. But the thing that sprung to my mind first of all, well, why can't I just use zig hook link? I'm not using this material for zig fishing. I'm using it to target large carp on the bottom in the traditional manner. I'm going to use some 12-pound zig flow, a size 8 long shank twister, a little blowback tube, that's the 0.5mm version. I'm going to use a tungsten kicker, but I'm going to use a small one, and I'm going to use a bait screw. Here's a good one. Okay, so the first move is to go from the front and exit the back of the hook there. And then we're going to take one of these little blowback tubes and thread that onto the mono like that. We take the blowback tube and we thread the point of the hook with the line already in it on like that. And be very careful not to impale yourself. Little twisting action. Moves the blowback tube round from the front to here on the shank. Now I've got too much tag end sticking through there at the moment, so I'm just going to pull that back to about there, that'll do, and then draw that back through like that. Then I'm going to take a bait screw and then I'll start to form the D. I want the D to be positioned roughly the same position as the bend of the hook. So when I do that, that's perfect. Up by the eye here, we've got about 5 or 6 millimeters sticking out, and that's perfect for what I want to do. Normally on a D rig, you would take that tag end there and thread it through there and blob it. I'm not going to do that because it's not going to work. The problem is we're using fine mono, and that blob is just going to pull through. So I'm going to anchor it in a different way. So with the point of the hook towards me like that, the gap in the eye is this side. So what I want to do is I want to whip away from that to start with. So I don't want to go that way, I want to go round the back in this case. And I just want to trap that tag end, and you can see that the tag is perfectly trapped on the back of the shank of the hook. I've got 3 turns on there at the moment. Let's continue whipping. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That'll do. When we get to this point here, we can just transfer things round and hold that in place. So after I've done those 9 turns, if I come across to my measuring box here, 23, 24 centimeters is about right. I can cut that at that point there. I'm then going to pass the tag end of that mono from the back and then exit the front. So you can see if I just hold this up like this, because this long shank hook has got an aggressively in-turned eye, the gape, which is the distance between the point and the eye, is getting quite closed down by this mono. The other issue is that this tag end here, yeah, it's been trapped by the wraps there, but we've got nothing stopping that tag end just being pulled through. So I'm going to use a little trick to solve both of these problems in one hit. So I'm using a size 8 long shank, so I'm going to use a small kicker to do this. And the reason why I need the kicker, you notice that I haven't trimmed this tag end yet. And the reason for that is that I'm going to use the kicker to fold back that tag end. So you can see that the kicker has folded back that tag, and that tag is just sticking out below there like that. By using the kicker to trap that tag in place, it means that there's no way I can pull that really hard, and there's no way that that loop is going to open up and I'm going to lose the bait. The other thing you notice is that the kicker has changed the exit angle of the mono. Now before, the mono was exiting at this angle here, now it's exiting much straighter. So rather than use the kicker to turn a supple material over more aggressively, I'm using the kicker to actually straighten the mono. So by having this mono exiting straighter, I've maintained a nice open gape If you watched my video on hooks, I'm sure some of you are going to be commenting, well, hang on, you said you never used kickers and you never used long shanks. Well, you know what? You're right, I did. But I've used them for very specific reasons in this rig. The kicker is there because it's doing a job. It's straightening that hook link. I could do it with other ways. I could do it with a bit of shrink tube and just have it completely straight. It's also holding that tag in place. And the kicker I'm using is a small kicker with a very, very short neck on it. So it's not closing down the gate. And it's this problem of closing down the gate which has pushed me to use a long shank instead of a standard short shank hook. So if you do want to use a short shank chod style, this is how I do it. So I get to that point and then I go through the eye like that, and I'm setting this D before I'm doing the whipping round, and then I whip round at this point, and this will trap the D in place. Then you can cut and blob this. You have to be extremely careful not to burn them, the hook link, and I'd stop it short and I just pull there. That gets that neatly round. So yeah, you can absolutely create a rig like this using a short shank chod style hook with 12-pound mono. You just have to be very careful when you cut and blob it. So I use a lot of size 6 shod twisters in my fishing, and what I realised is when you look at the overall length of a size 8 long shank twister, it's actually only a couple of mil longer than a size 6 standard twister or shod twister. So I'm really not making the overall hook size and length much longer. Back when I was using long shanks, I was using them in microbarbs, and I had this problem with the long shanks getting caught in the net after a capture. Since I switched over to barbless, as soon as I hook a carp, I'm unhooking them as soon as they get into the bank. So I'm eliminating this potential risk of a long shank hook getting caught in the net very, very quickly. Here we go, absolute chunk, 48.8. That was taken on a little tiger nut over a pile of particle. Little 2-ounce inline running rig, fish mono D style. Oh, beast of a fish this. So at the other end here, because this is a mono rig, I could just tie this direct to a swivel, but the option I'm going to use is a non-slip mono loop knot onto a quick chain swivel. Depending on what sort of fishing I'm doing, I've been using it with either short anti-tangle sleeves or extra long ones. The short anti-tangle sleeves are very easy to thread on. All I have to do is take the mono there, squeeze down the loop, and I can literally just thread it straight through there like that. I can then take a quick chain swivel, just pull that on there, anti-tangle sleeve, and position that round like that. So that's a nice simple option for short and medium range, but if I wanted to have something that was more anti-tangle, what I do is I'm going to take one of these extra long anti-tangle sleeves and I'm going to use some of the zig flow that I've already used for the Hooklink material, and I'm going to use it to make a threading tool basically. So I just thread some mono through there. I take the Hooklink, thread the mono through the Hooklink loop, thread that tag end back through the anti-tangle sleeve until it pokes out the other end. As soon as it's done that, if I hold both of those threads like that, I can draw that through, and that will thread that anti-tangle sleeve onto there like that. I could of course have already put this in place before I tied the loop knot, but I just thought I'd show you this trick of using a bit of mono as the threading tool. Then we can hook on the quick chain swivel and slide the sleeve in place. So you can see what this creates. It creates a massive long stiff boom. Then we're into our finer, suppler material. This is 0.30, so you know it's pretty kind of thin stuff. If I wanted a shorter rig with less supple, then obviously I'd just make the whole rig shorter, something more like that. So if you want something really uber anti-tangle, but just with a bit of movement at the business end, then that's absolutely an option as well. So in terms of hook baits, I've designed this rig for basically use with bottom baits, but you could use wafters. So I could fit a single 18mm bottom bait on here, a 20mm bottom bait. Works quite nicely with a couple of tigers, caught a lot of fish on that. A 15mm wafter works as well. The bait screw's a little bit long, but I can just about make that work. So I've got another really special one to show you this morning. It's named Cuttail, 42 pounds. This was the second fish of the night, both on the little Nash Zig Flow Hooklink. Yeah, the rig's destroyed afterwards, but I've got loads pre-tied, so I just clip another one on and we're ready to go again. So one of the things you'll notice on Zig Hooklink, it's rated as being neutrally buoyant. So neutrally buoyant means it's not going to sink and it's not going to float. As carp anglers, we get obsessed about, oh, I must use a sinking hook link. If you watch my video on, hook link loop up, if you get the engineering right of your connections and you use some anti-tangle sleeves which actually kind of make that hinge pancake flat, I don't think you need to worry too much about adding a load of putty or adding sinkers to this. If you want to go to the nth degree and have everything absolutely pinned down to the max, then obviously you can add some sinkers to this rig. So I've knocked up another rig here, and before I put the loop in place, this is the stage at which I want to add the tungsten sinker. So we just fold the mono over, gently slide it on there. To make these easier to slide in place, if you just wet the mono like that, and the sinker slides in place a little bit easier. I know it might be hard to get your head around what I'm doing here, but yeah, I really am using 12-pound Zig Hooklink material, and I'm fishing for 30s, 40s and 50s. Zero failures, got no issues whatsoever. We get hung up on 25-pound material or 35-pound material, and you mustn't get confused about, well, I'm fishing for 30s or 40s, therefore I need really strong hook link. No, you don't. You've got to be careful on your knots, obviously. These hook links are only good for basically one use. This is what one looks like after I've caught a carp. Blowback tube has been blown all the way up the shank of the hook. The D's completely deformed, so we can't use this rig again. So catch a carp and throw the rig away. Obviously I'll recycle the hook, resharpen it if possible, recycle the blowback tube, I'll recycle the kicker, I'll recycle everything. You take a 3-pound rod or a 3.5-pound rod to full test curve, and you're only ever putting 3 or 3.5-pound load on the line. The only time that's not going to be the case is if you do a direct pull and you take the rod out of the equation and go straight to the clutch. So this hook link material at 12-pound rated strength, that's 4 times stronger than the maximum test curve of my rod. So it's plenty strong enough. So to tie the non-slip mono loop knot, I just tie a simple overhand knot like that. Then I make the loop, and I want to pass it through exactly the same direction, so that this material here and this material here is exiting below this loop here. I make the loop the size I want to make it roughly. Then I take the tag end. It doesn't matter which way around I go. I could go from there over the top, or I could go behind. It really doesn't matter. But then I'm just going to whip down 1, 2, 3, 4. That'll do. And then I'm going to go up and under this hole. So I'm going to pass from the bottom, exit the top, and we just start to draw that down like that. So all of those materials are exiting exactly the same direction through that loop. So to draw that down, I just pull on that tag end a little bit more. I get a rig puller, then I take another rig puller, and at that point I'm going to wet it. And then we simply pull down nice and snug. And we can see that knot's tightened down really nice and neatly. Trim the tag end off, and that's a little loop. So if you want to reuse sinkers from rig to rig, which I absolutely do, use a boiling needle tool, use a hook eye threader, or use a combination of the both, and it works great. So what I've found with these extra large sinkers is that they're quite robust, and sometimes the hook eye threader is not stiff enough to go through. So what I do is I take just a standard boilie needle, and I use the boilie needle. You have to be very careful when you do that. And I'm just using that to open up the pre-made hole in the sinker. So once this has opened up and you've moved this sinker a few times, you can just pop it straight onto a threading tool like this and thread it on like that. Another option is that you could just use this boilie needle as is, thread that through there, and then just use that as your threading tool.